So far you can see how dangerous this gambit is if black accepts it. But if your opponent declined it, does it has the same venom? Well, as I have highlighted over here, black has three ways to decline this gambit, and let's see each by turn to find out what we are up to. The first move I want to consider is the most popular one, namely knight to c6. And after this, all you have to remember is take on c5, so that when black recapture, we can once again build up our nice pawn chain with d4 attacking the bishop. And this bishop has two good locations. I particularly do not like the move bishop to e7 because then black is really struggling to get the g8 knight out. So the first move, bishop to b6. I think now you get hang of this gambit, right? The next move of white is very obvious. c3, creating a wonderful pawn chain. And after knight g to e7, the golden move, you remember? Yup, bishop to d3, completely stopping black to castle on the king side. Well, apart from castle, black has other moves. So for example, if we continue with knight to g6, then as we seen in the accept variation, we have the move h4, h5, and if he plays knight to f5, then later on we can always kick this knight with g4. The big remarkable difference here is black bishop has been sidelined, so our dark square bishop can goes to a3 and control all these dark squares. But let's roll back to our critical question. Why can't black castle here? What is the problem? And the answer is very obvious. If you have seen my Chess Trap 2 Greek gift, then I'm sure you instantly spot this dazzling sacrifice on h7. Yup, bishop takes h7. If white doesn't take it, then he is a clear pawn down. So most of the player has taken this. But after this, the follow-up is a very easy one. Knight to g5 check. Black king has two options, but amongst them, king to g8 is the worst one, because after this, you play the simplest move in the world, queen to h5, looking at the juicy h7 square. And the only route to escape this king is by playing rook to e8. Completely fails here because of the following deadly sequence. Queen to h7, king to f8, and now the star move. Bishop to a3, pinning down the e7 knight, so that in the next move, queen to h8 leads to checkmate. So you can see how quickly game can be finished if black goes to g8 square. The more critical option is king to g6, but after this, I propose this very strong move, h4, and the idea is very obvious. Regardless of black plays, we are going to continue with h5 and nabbing the black queen. So let me show you a sample line. By far the most popular choice here is f5, but this is already a disaster zone because after h5, king has only square available, namely h6, and after this, yup, knight to e6, discover check and nabbing the black sweetie. So now let's check out what we are going to do against bishop to b4 check. And yet again, the answer is very simple. c3, bishop to a5, and now golden move, bishop to d3. Okay, we have knight g to e7. And because black hasn't castle, I propose this very crafty move, a4, a constructive waiting move, so that if black castle here foolishly, then we have this Greek gift, as we seen just earlier. So that's a bad idea by black camp. If knight to g6, then we have h4, h5. So that means the only good option here is knight to f5, which at first sight looks very good move because black is attacking over d4. But you know what? We are going to play bishop to a3, pretending that we have not seen the threat and telling your opponent, okay buddy, go ahead, take that pawn. Well, I bet very few black players will resist this. So the obvious continuation here is knight captures d4. But this is a huge mistake because of the following forcing variation. Knight captures d4, knight captures d4. Now we play queen to g4, a double attack. So black response is forced. He has to play knight to f5. And as this knight is the only defender of g7, the task of white is very easy. You chop off this knight, and then after, you take on g7. Well, not so surprising, black get a completely losing game. His rook has no way to go, and in order to protect this rook, black has to play this ugly move, king to d7, whereupon white has this straightaway winning sequence, e6 check. If king takes, then castle is a very strong reply. So king to c6 is the best reply here. But after that, simple move, e captures f7, and sooner or later, this pawn will promote to queen. And look at the pathetic position of the black king. Clearly, the game shouldn't be last long. So guys, these are some of the wonderful tricks exist if your opponent continue with knight to c6, declining the gambit. Finally, let's check out the two other way to decline this variation, and the first one is b6, keeping the black structure flexible, and maybe black has an idea of bishop to a6. So against this, my recommendation is you start with c3, stopping bishop to a6, because if black play it, then this is a blunder guys, as after bishop takes, knight takes and queen check, we are nabbing the piece. So that is right out of the equation. And apart from this, no matter whatever black plays, white's simple idea is he wants to play a3 and d4 and thus getting our good center. So let me show you a sample line. Knight to c6 has been highly played here. We continue with a3, and doesn't matter whatever black plays, let's say knight g to e7, we continue with d4. The point is, after c captures d4 and the move c captures d4, we again obtain the wonderful center and our plan will remain the same. There are some nasty tricks if your opponent continue with knight to f5, which is in fact the most preferred choice by the black camp. And against this, you can start either with knight c3 or h4. Let's say in this game, white plays h4 first, and after bishop to e7, he continue with knight to c3, which indeed sets up the platform for the cunning tricks. There are two moves which are outright bad here. Number one, knight captures h4, mistake. We already seen this, right? Knight takes, bishop takes, and now queen to g4, creating a double attack followed up with knight to b5 and knight to d6 check, which pick up the rook on the king side. Okay, what about the other choice, namely castle on the king side? Well, this time around, white can play another attacking jab, g4. Knight captures h4 is a forced, but after knight takes, bishop takes, and the move b5, sadly, black knight cannot go to the king side, And wherever it goes on the queen side, let's say knight to a5, we have this star move g5. The same old tactic, bishop g5, queen h5, h6, and this time around we have a tactical blow from the different angle, f4, bishop to e7, and f5, completely dominating black on the king side. The threat is very obvious, bishop h6 and then mate on h file. So in order to avoid this, black has to play bishop to g5, whereupon white plays the obvious move f6, shutting down the door, so that after bishop takes and rook takes, you can try by yourself, black simply cannot avoid the checkmate. Last but not least, what to do against the move c4? Well, I propose this straightforward approach. You continue with c3 first. And black's idea is he wants to destroy our pawn chain by this a5 lever. But by doing this, I reckon he is hurting his position, as we can continue with b5, stopping the natural development of black knight. And if allowed, our simple plan is we want to play a4 followed up with d3, which completely destroy the black center. So by far, as per the database, the most popular choice is a4, stopping our a-pawn advancement. But it does not stop our second break, namely d3. After pawn takes and bishop takes, as you can see, I have highlighted by the arrows, simple but effective plan of campaign by the white camp is, he wants to play queen to e2, castle, and then later on, timely push the move c4, which give him a very good game. Let me show you how we can achieve this by showing one of my recent game against a 2100 rated opponent. Here my opponent plays knight to d7. I responded with queen to e2, and after knight to c5, there is no way in the world I am going to give this bishop, so I played bishop to c2. After bishop to d7, castle, I am all set to play the move c4, so my opponent rightly pressurized the b pawn with queen to b6. But as it turned out that this move is a great disaster, because after c4, pawn takes and now knight to a3, and suddenly you can realize the danger. What really white is aiming is he wants to take this c4 with the knight and then jump on the juicy d6 square. Well, the game finished very quickly. He played bishop to e7. I took on c4, and when my opponent finally take on b5, I give him this rude shock. Rook to b1, attacking the queen. Queen to c6. Look at the bad kingside development, which really hurting the black camp. Rook to d1 has been played. f6, big mistake. Knight to b6, attacking the rook. Rook to a6, counter-attacking, but missing the important tactic. Knight to d7, knight captures d7, and now sting in the tail, bishop to e4. p7 is a complete goner, and in fact, in the game, my opponent plays queen to c7, which allow me to finish the game instantly with rook captures b7. And you can see the multiple pieces are hanging, as simply black cannot save his rook as well as knight on the d7. So I think this model game gives you a great indication how dangerous white attack is, even though black tried to decline this gambit. That's it guys. I hope with this lecture, now you are confident enough to play this gambit over the board. You can literally use this as a complete surprise weapon in the tournament practice. And as I have shown in this video, White has not only lot of attacking potential, but there are some cool tricks and traps exist which your opponent has to deal with it all the time during the game. Well, thank you for watching this video. Feel free to like, subscribe and comment, and I will meet you in my next episode very soon. Bye and take care.